This is the Women Your Mother Warned You About podcast, sponsored by Sales Gravy. I'm Gina Tremarco, Master Sales Trainer and Director of Coaching Programs at Sales Gravy. Before we get started with this week's episode, I want you to go and check out Sales Gravy University. Sales Gravy University is the place where sales professionals and sales leaders from across the globe go to learn and upscale. And right now, if you're a brand new user and you've never used Sales Gravy University before, you can get your first course for free by using coupon code FREECOURSE when you go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's coupon code FREECOURSE when you go to learn.salesgravy.com. And hey, I've got several courses there that you can check out. So I hope to see you there. But let's go ahead and get started with this week's episode.
So a great question that you would ask Jeb would be, hey Jeb, what's happened in the past to cause you to think that?
Yeah. As we do with our prospects. I love this.
So why is that a really good question?
Why is that a good question? Because it shows that we're trying to understand before we try and influence the other way. It's like a ledge.
Trying to understand his motivation.
Seek first to understand, then be understood.
Okay, so they're great cliches. So what you're doing there is Jeb is now going to tell you a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so Jeb is doing the heavy lifting. You're not.
I'm gonna try this on Jeb.
I'm going to be fired after this episode. I haven't even come across this scenario, but some people might have done, and it will be useful.
Go on, Bernadette. If we get fired, will you hire us? So welcome to America, Bernadette.
Thank you.
This is so exciting. I'm going to start this show rogue. Welcome everybody to the Women Your Mother Warned You About, sponsored by Sales Gravy. I'm Gina Tremarco, one of your co-hosts for this show, and also a master trainer for Sales Gravy. Alongside me is
Susanna Gray-Jones, your other co-host on the show.
On the other side of the pond. And a year ago or so, we had our lovely guest, Bernadette McClelland. You know, I do so bad at pronouncing things. You know this, Bernadette, as I butchered things last year with you on the show. But welcome back and welcome to America.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So rapt to be here and so fortunate to be able to be a resident of the USA.
And where are you located now in the US?
Yeah, we're in Colorado. So we're 10 in the mountains and not far from the CBD. So really.
So nice. So awesome. So, okay, we have a lot to talk about. One highlight for sure is Outbound, because you are coming to Outbound in person.
I certainly am. Yeah.
How are we going to do this now? Last year, you were supposed to be the Oprah of Down Under, and I was supposed to be the Oprah of over here. Are we going to have a battle of the Oprahs?
Oh, look, I reckon we're going to have to do something. I mean, seriously, we're going to have to do something. But I mean, last year we live streamed, remember?
Yeah.
We live streamed from Australia, Down Under. And that was super, super fun with the guys over there. But yeah, this year I cannot wait. 2019, I was there and in Georgia, and I spoke, and I cannot wait this time around because I'm going to be hanging out with you. You weren't there in 2019.
No.
How can you believe that? Hey, Gina wasn't there. She wasn't at Sounds Gravy. She's now Sounds Gravy Queen.
I know.
Yeah, have you guys met in person? Have you met in person?
No, not at all.
No.
Wonderful. But Oprah's United. Oprah's United.
Oprah's United. Yeah. Well, whatever we do at Outbound, because, you know, us Women Your Mother Warned You About will be live streaming from Outbound. So we hope that you can participate with us, and we could have some super fun with you doing kind of a battle of the Oprahs.
We will definitely have super fun.
Okay, cool. Well, okay. So my first question, and for the listeners that did not listen to our episode with Bernadette last year, Bernadette did not live in Colorado, and now she does. What inspired that move?
It was a pretty big move. for 10 years now, I've been coming over to the States from Melbourne and hanging out with the sales kind of field, the guys, the girls, speaking while I'm over here. And then it was late 2018, we came back to Australia, and my husband and I said, I don't know what it takes to live there. But of course, to live over here, you need a green card. And there's 4 ways to get a green card. You either put a ton of money on the table, you go into the lottery, you get sponsored in, or you marry somebody. And all 4 of those options were not viable.
Wait a second. Your husband was not going for you getting married.
No, not at all. He wasn't up for divorce. No.
That would have been easier.
There was one route that we took, which was a kind of, not many people get it. The Pulitzer Prize winners do, and the Nobel Peace Prizes do, and Melania Trump did. And I applied for an alien of exceptional ability, which is an immediate green card for both myself and my husband, and immigration. Immigration accepted it when I was actually sitting at Outbound in 2019. I got the acceptance then and shared that with my breakout room. But then because of the immigration kind of shutdown and COVID, it was all put on hold until last November, late November. Immigration said your appointment's in 2 weeks at the US consulate in Melbourne, Australia. And 4 weeks later, our passports were returned with green cards.
Oh, so cool. Okay, I want to know what this alien of special
exceptional ability.
Yeah, it's cool. Exceptional ability in your field, in my field of sales leadership. And I ticked 9 out of 12 boxes, and you only need 3 to be approved by immigration.
That is amazing.
It was amazing. Like, seriously, it was like Willy Wonka. Remember Willy Wonka and the chicken and chocolate bar? That's how we felt.
I just want to be of exceptional ability. I mean,
yeah.
I kind of like the sound of alien too. Alien of exceptional ability.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so not so much alien. Alien, when we think of alien, we think of like supernatural. I guess alien comes from Latin, other. So other, we think of it as other instead of you being an alien.
Nice. No, I just don't, but anyway.
I'm very envious. I want that. I need to work to getting that so I can get that super green card.
I think maybe if you're nice to Bernadette, maybe she'll consult with you.
Yeah.
Well, I did. But here's the thing. We had only a couple of months to do something. So we sold everything. We sold everything and we rented our house out, but we sold everything. And we came over here with 6 suitcases, 2 wheelies, and 2 backpacks. That's it.
I love it.
It's very gutsy, isn't it? That's one word that we talk about, don't we, when we speak about you? You're very gutsy. I heard that quite a few times in the other episode. And as Tony Robbins says on your website, a superstar. So
wow, that was a gutsy move too.
Oh, so excited to meet you. So excited to meet you. What are you going to be speaking about?
So 3 categories, ladies. So the first one is the virtual, and that I've just sent that recording off last week. That's around conscious selling and the art of commercial conversations. So that's pretty much based on 9 key conversations, kind of drilled into 3 of them. I'm going to be working with the leaders in the sales leadership category and on the sales leadership stage. And that will be around transformational sales leadership and, how we can create change and how you can kind of move up. Your sales leadership basically is all about transformation. It's ultimately about transformation and, moving from that micromanager kind of status. And then the main stage is around story. What's your story? And kind of bringing my own flavor to that.
They should have you and I should have a session together on story because we've talked about this. We both have a background in improv and story.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. We should. I spoke with Victor Antonio. I did an interview with Victor a couple of weeks ago. We just God, we just riffed out like it was just unbelievable. Just going deep and just, sharing different, thought leadership around story. And it was just really, really cool.
He's such a lovely man. I love him. He's like the kindest, gentlest guy.
Yeah, I've never spoken to him. So I can't wait to hang out with him at Outbound.
I'd like to dive into, I'm sure Susanna's got a ton of questions. And I've had a lot of time with you in the past, but I would like to dive into leadership because I'm coaching more and more sales leaders of teams. And it's interesting the trends that I see. I would be curious to hear some of your thoughts on how do we transform these leaders? Because, I think a lot of these leaders are micromanagers because they've been given zero leadership training.
Yes, I agree with that. A lot of them have just come up through the ranks and just come straight off the sales floor, and are kind of like viewing their team as though they were still one of the boys or one of the team.
Mm-hmm.
They're still kind of living in what they're picking up from gurus from the 80s. And fear, I think, drives a lot because numbers aren't being made.
Definitely fear. I see that so much, but also we speak about a lot when salespeople are over promoted and sometimes they don't understand. They might be exceptional salespeople who is come very naturally to. They don't understand why others don't get it the same way that they do, so that they try and sort of force the process and they don't take a step back. That's one thing I found. I don't know whether that's something that you come across a lot.
I'm a really big believer in coaching. Like, clearly, I've got all the pieces of paper necessary to prove coaching, whatever, that nobody's ever asked me to look at. So that's all kind of there. And one thing, there's a big difference between deal coaching and coaching. And, I think in my background in corporate Australia, very heavily in companies like Xerox and Kodak and Computer Associates, so very high level sales environments, the coaching or our reviews were very much around deals, and it was very much around where you're up to and all the rest of it. I think what's missing is the ability for a leader to actually be able to tap into, and here we go, the story behind the story. And, we will all give our reasons or excuses, depending. But I think, in a lot of cases, salespeople are too, I don't know whether it's ego or fear or what it is, to be vulnerable, to be able to say to their leaders, hey, I'm really stuck here, because the expectations are you're a professional and you should know what to do. So I think that's lacking from the salespeople to actually be able to say, this is where I'm at, and to trust that the leader has their best interest at heart. If you've got a micromanager, why would you do that? Why would you share where you're at? So we talk about a micromanager, which is, is very much command and control. I've kind of got 5 levels to my sales leadership model, and it's, micromanager is at the bottom, very totalitarian, very command and control, and your results, you're not going to get the most out of your salespeople. Then you've got your manager who means well. She's just a glorified seller, and it's very traditional, and that's, telling and selling. You've then got the deal maker who's transactional. We're just going to get this deal. We're going to manage my scoreboard. And as you go up, you get the needle mover, and you start to look at this sales leader that's starting to transition and introduce values and introduce what's really important, until you get to the sales leader who's courageous and is able to build other leaders. So it's not just about managing a team of sellers. It's actually building a team of leaders. And that's kind of where I think that, sales leadership, a lot of cases are there. but there are naturally the ones that aren't.
I love the word courageous.
Yeah. So,
Define courageous. How do you see courageous?
so first of all, why do you love it?
I think it's why do I don't think a lot of leaders will understand what courageous means to be a courageous leader. That's why I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So courage comes from the Latin word heart to start with. If you've done French, le coeur, so it's kind of all tied in with, I guess, high levels of self-awareness, empathy, while still being outcome focused. So I think that's, we hear the term servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be really careful with that phrase, that it's also not perceived as kind of being subservient. So you've still got to be able to be outcome focused, and consciously, I think, push your own boundaries while encouraging the team to be able to kind of expand their potential as well. And I think this is where, when I talk about, being courageous, it's kind of understanding that if you want your team or you want your business to grow, then ultimately you need to look at a few different models of leaders that have gone before us.
Mm-hmm.
So have you guys, I'm sure that you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Such geeks, but like, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Claire Graves' spiral dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Graves.
Tony Robbins' 6 core needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Tribal Leadership by Logan King and Wrights. They're all growth models, and they're all based on an aspirational journey. And so when I talk about the courageous, it really is the ability for a leader to be able to springboard and springboard and springboard to that next level, or that last level, where they're really okay. And we all dip in and out of all the levels, but they're really okay with I don't know, it's kind of like having this ability to be able to really be present to their people and put their own ego to the side.
Mm. I love it. You make it sound so easy. I had a situation the other day. I had a candidate who just said, I want to leave because there's such a negative atmosphere at this new company that I'm working in. It's just awful, Susanna. So I thought, the right thing to do would be to speak to the sales manager and say, in a kind way, this is the feedback I had. Now, said sales manager then went and brought the team into a meeting and said, I've heard that people are feeling very negative in this team. From now on, when I walk in, I want to see smiles and only smiles. What do you think happened? The opposite. And it's like so many people, she thought she was being courageous and she thought she got that, but she did not seek to understand. She went too far down the courageous route. But you can't tell people how to feel. And I think a lot of sales managers, they do the courage bit, but then they miss out on the care and the understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, there's this evolution, and we look at, if we take, I know there's 5 levels in my model, but if we take it, the transactional leader and the transactional manager and the transformational leader, because I think, there's a difference between management and leadership. You've still got that person out there that control equals power.
Lady Macbeth.
I failed, Shakespeare.
Lady Macbeth syndrome. Power makes them go mad.
Oh, right. I'll have to look that one up. But I think now we're kind of like ideas equal power. We're kind of in that space where if you can sit with your team as a leader and be able to say, hey, listen, let's kind of open the kimono, let's kind of throw some ideas on the table, and be really collaborative with your team as the leader, you're going to be viewed so differently. People are going to feel safe. And that's all about being visionary and inclusive. So, yeah, I don't know, purpose, does purpose come into play these days? I think so, as opposed to task. Task focused versus purpose focused. And I think where that courageous comes out, Gina, is also some leaders or some managers are still very measured in what they do. If I say this, then how will that make me look? I'm just going to keep plowing through and expect this of you. Does this all make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's a good conversation to have, because we know that so many people, it is probably around 75%, I think is the statistic of people who will quit a manager versus a company, right? Because and how do we improve that? I mean, it continues to go on. I think a big part of it is the lack of emotional intelligence. I think, to your point, there's a lot of ego involved, and then you lose talent, and then you start all over again to bring them in. And you could hire Susanna to do that, and she can make some good money to find people to replace. But there's such I think, cost to the bottom line when you're not emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, and the Peter principle.
Mm-hmm.
Peter principle.
Mm-hmm.
I get two of them. I get mixed up. Where when you get promoted, everybody who's been promoted in a company has only been promoted up to the level of incompetence,
Mm-hmm.
because you've never done that job before. So you've got leaders that are totally incompetent, and it's only because they've never done sales leadership before.
Right.
And so what's missing is, how do we get that incompetence? How do we make them competent? And then, then they'll go up again, maybe to the next level, and they're incompetent at that level. So, you've only got, and if you look at salespeople, predominantly salespeople will not invest in themselves. Most salespeople will not put their hand in their pocket to buy a sales book.
Correct.
So these guys and girls are being promoted to sales leadership. And are they walking their talk? Are they expecting their salespeople to go out and, continue to self-develop or not? So there's a whole rug. You need to be able to have the honest conversations with people.
And I think feedback as well, something we talk about a lot. Gosh, I sound like I'm bigging myself up. Yeah, I'm my worst critic. But one thing I think I did very well, I was a very, very junior manager and made a lot of mistakes. I'd micromanaged, but I took feedback from my staff. Unfavorable feedback that I thought meant I had to quit my job. But the minute that they saw me take it and go with it, the respect just went up a notch. And I see so many managers out there, managed managers, who just will not accept the feedback. I am now up here and they're down here. They see it in the wrong way from the beginning. It's like you say, the way it starts up.
Yeah. And that whole 360 feedback, it's scary. Like, it's really scary because you're getting it from everywhere.
Yeah.
I remember I was in sales, and it was it was the 80s, and customer, what was it called? Customer delight. Like, we were really going down that route of customer delight as Xerox was. And so I remember one of my best accounts, they got the feedback form. And back then, the way that Xerox did it, they actually put the name of the technician, the name of the credit officer, the name of the salesperson. So it was extremely targeted to the individual.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting this feedback form back from this university, and I scored really low in value. And I'm like, I was seeing them regularly. I was really, I was looking after them. I didn't understand it. And what it was simply, and we hear about it now, I was not bringing any fresh insights to the table. So I was going in and saying, how are you going? Here's your coffee. Here's a donut. And so that way back then, that was my perception of getting value. So for me to take that feedback, I was dumbfounded. But I took it on board and I learned from it. And, I think from a leadership perspective, if you can get your team, your clients, your managers, your subordinates, whoever it may be, and you're brave enough and courageous enough to be able to put it out there and take that feedback on board, there is always a learning. Always.
All right, Susanna, you can give me feedback after the podcast.
Well, actually, I was just thinking, no, I'm not going to say anything mean. I was thinking about Gina and I have done some co-coaching in the past, and we had a very junior sales manager. And Gina, I remember she had a light bulb moment when Gina said to her, you have to understand now, you are never going to get favorable feedback all the time as a manager. And a light bulb went off. We think that's quite obvious, but to many sales managers, they feel they have to be perfect from day one. They're not ready. They're not resilient enough to get that feedback. But Bernadette, I've got one question for you. What would you say to a new sales manager who maybe doesn't want to go down the feedback route or is scared of it? How can they come comfortable with it? You got any
Great
advice?
question.
But it's a decision. I think it's as simple as a decision. If you're looking at a leadership role is all about growth, and it's about your growth. It's also about you helping the team grow. And so I think it's as simple as you've got a choice. You either wrap up the fact that feedback is a massive resource that you can tap into that costs nothing. You don't have to go to a leadership course and pay thousands of dollars for a leadership course. You can simply ask people for their take on your leadership. And I think the other thing that I would say is that there is no right and there is no wrong. And so we all come to the table with different belief systems, different conditionings. We've all grown up in different environments. We've had different experiences in our sales role. And so the people that you're going to be asking for feedback are all coming to the table with their experiences and their feedback based on their life. And everyone's going to be different. And that's why we can't say, oh my God, they're right and I'm wrong. That's why you've got to look at it. And I say to people, look at feedback as though it was a loaf of bread. Like, it's just a loaf of bread. Lose the attachment to the feedback, but maintain the intention. And so it's up to you, your gut feel, your intuition will zone in on the feedback that deep down inside, you know where you need to work on.
Yeah.
Your own intuition will tell you that.
Amen. And I think going back to what you said about so many salespeople won't necessarily invest in themselves, right? I know that I see a lot of this with the leaders that I coach. The leaders that I coach are high performers. They decide to invest in coaching because they want to be better leaders because they've been promoted into the role. So they will seek that out and they will pay for it out of their pocket. But if you can't pay for it out of your pocket, for those listening at home who are like, what do? I really don't have the money to spend on that. Maybe I can buy a book. Maybe I can get feedback from the people that I manage. If you can't do any of those things, you could go ask other leaders for advice or mentorship or guidance. I think that's what's been most beneficial to me coming up as a leader throughout my career, and not just in sales leadership, but general leadership, is getting feedback from other leaders that I admire and having them coach me on what to do. And I think there's also a frustration level. Sometimes you're in a role where you're a leader and you've got leaders above you, but the leaders above you don't give you the best feedback, don't give you any coaching or leadership. And it could be super frustrating going, well, why should I do it? Why should I be a good leader if my leader's not a good leader? Well, you kind of have to change the wave of what's going on. But I think that's another kind of contagion that happens, that they start to model bad leadership, but you have control to go become a better leader. I had a leader who was promoted over me, and I was supposed to be next in line for the promotion. And he got the promotion, and I was angry, so angry about it. But there's nothing I could do about it but to accept the scenario. And you want to talk about, I think he thought he was being courageous, just kind of like what Susanna said. Like if they think they're being courageous, like he called me and said, I hope you're not mad at me that I'm your boss now. And it was the most bizarre way to start a conversation as a leader. But I think that goes back to what you say about incompetence. Like he didn't even know what to do or what to say or how to be. Of course, I was nice and snarky at the same time, shocker. And I just said, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on the promotion. That's awesome. I wish I would have known that there was an opportunity to apply for the promotion.
Maybe you can come up with some ideas.
Welcome to your new leadership role, buddy.
And I think it doesn't take long for people's true colors to show. And I think that it's my husband, we've just left the country naturally, and he was working for a company. He was a sales leader, and it was all remote because of COVID. And unfortunately, it was a toxic environment. But his direct leader, because the other team members had been there for so long, they were part of the family. And I think this is another thing that happens is that we talk about turnover. And sometimes the people have just been there for so long. They're part of the furniture. They're part of the kind of family vibe. And how can senior leadership move these other sales leaders on? We can't do that because they've been here for so long. So we talk about a revolving door with people kind of moving through the door too quickly. But there's also a point in time where you have to actually move people through the door for the growth of the company. And that courage at the top of the tree.
That right there is courage.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
People often talk, don't they, about managing upwards, manage your manager. There's that whole kind of saying. What do you think that means? I know that's a massive question and we haven't got enough time to go into it too deeply. But one thing that I am often telling people, and I know what I think, but I'm keen to know what advice would you give to people who maybe have a boss who they don't necessarily agree with, and they want to influence them in a positive way without sounding like a whinger?
Good question. A really good question. So that kind of dovetails into the skill of being able to tell a story, because we can, for you to go to your boss. So let's just say that, we have a manager who, is not competent, or there's politics involved. And see that once again, politics, and I'm not a game player. I shoot myself in the foot all the time because I can't play the political game, nor do I want to. And so I think if you are in that situation, and this can roll across to a client as well. This can also spin off. You could be with a client or a prospect, because this is all about change. This is all about selling change. And what you're trying to do inside your organization with you and your leader is you are somehow wanting to influence them to change. Now, you can't do that by a push strategy. You cannot do that by telling them or by, persuading or pushing or convincing. Because you know what it's like? If we're told that we have to do something, what happens? The wall goes up and we completely resist. So how we, what we need to learn to do there, I mean, that's the same. It's basically an objection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of similar to overcoming an objection. So, what we need to do there is we need to be able to share or bring a story into it, frame it in such a way, bring in the relevance where that person is able to see themselves in that scenario that you're talking about. And then that will enable them to begin to shift their thinking, because what you are trying to do is shift a belief. And so this is why coaching comes in such, and coaching is all about asking questions.
Yeah.
And getting people to come up with their own answers, whereas mentoring is telling them what to do and what you do.
Yeah.
But to create change and to create a shift, you've got to interrupt somebody's pattern of thought. And that can only kind of happen through really, really good questioning.
I'm just trying to think of a scenario in my head. So say, for example, Jeb would never say this to me, but say Jeb said to me whilst I was training, Susanna, I want you to change the way that you train completely. I want you to do it exactly this way that I completely didn't agree with. And I knew that wouldn't have the best intention for my learners. This hasn't happened, but if it did, I suppose you said go away from the persuasion, go away from the trying to convince. It's more that influencing the change. So, and putting them into your position. So I could say maybe something like, oh, feedback that I've had is that people like this and this completely understand what you're saying. Based on that, how would you recommend that I do that?
I just want you to, let's role play. I just want you to do what I've always told you to do.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I completely accept that you want me to do what you've always told me to do. I was just very curious about that request based on some feedback that I've had. They particularly liked an element that I went in, which was your direction, only 6 months ago. And I got such great feedback from that based on your suggestion. So based on your original suggestion, how can I bring that in with your new suggestion?
Try 1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3.
So can you see what's happening? So are you feeling something at the moment? Are you feeling a little bit of kind of like, oh shit, I'm scrambling here?
Yeah, I'm feeling scrambling.
And I can see it on your face. So what I'm seeing is a sheen on your face now. So these are the things kind of, because it's probably the light, but there's also a little bit of flash. So it's quite simply, and this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we do. And I'll be sharing some of this on the main stage at Outbound as well, because I know kind of bring it in with salespeople's objections as well.
Yeah.
That is what we do. A couple of things will happen. We will either kind of pedal back and kind of like try to throw in some justification or some data or some proof or, that worked last time, that whatever.
Yeah.
And that is someone like Jeb, he's just going to cut straight to the chase.
Yeah.
He's just going to call it for what it is. There may be another scenario where you push back on Jeb and he's just absolutely call it as it is. So pedaling back and pushing back, one is flight, the other is fight.
Yeah.
And neither of those are going to work.
Yeah.
And with utopia leadership, neither of those are going to work. So a great question that you would ask Jeb would be, hey, Jeb, what's happened in the past to cause you to think that?
Yeah. As we do with our prospects. I love this.
So why is that a really good question?
Why is that a good question? Because it shows that we're trying to understand before we try and influence the other way. It's like a ledge.
Trying to understand his motivation.
Seek first to understand, then be understood.
Okay, so they're great cliches. So what you're doing there is Jeb is now going to tell you a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's going to tell you his story. And so Jeb is doing the heavy lifting. You're not.
I'm gonna try this on Jeb.
So you're now.
I'm going to be fired after this episode. I haven't even come across this scenario, but some people might have done, and it will be useful.
Go on, Bernadette. If we get fired, will you hire us?
So there you go. So it comes back, and you'll hear my storyseller model at Outbound, but it's very much the stories that you tell yourself about your buyer are the internal stories. So you've got to start becoming a story catcher. It's the stories that you tell your buyer, which are external stories, and that's where you become a storyteller. And what we've just gone through now is the third component, which is the essential stories, which are the stories you've got to elicit from your buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you become a story seeker. And so that is
I love that.
the area that is so often missed by salespeople because you go down your own little rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
and you put your own interpretation on what you believe Jeb has said.
We tell our own stories. Instead, we get him to tell us a story instead of initiating the story internally.
It's curiosity. And so as salespeople and sales leaders, so if we circle back to being a sales leader here, your role as a coach, in the true sense of the word coach, is to also be courageous enough to shut up and to ask those questions, to really elicit the stories from your salespeople, the stories that matter to them.
I was just going to ask if you have, I think you've answered it for me, but what are, how do I put this, ways to ask a question in coaching that does not put the other person in a mode of feeling like they're being judged, feeling like they're incompetent? Does this make sense?
Yeah,
because
totally.
Sometimes leaders can be in a coaching mode of asking those questions with the intention, the right intention, but it comes off as either an interrogation or the sense of feeling like you're an idiot and you don't know what the answers are.
Yeah, great question, and a really important question. So I'm just going to, once again, I'm going to do this by example.
Put Gina into role play this time. Gina's turn. Gina's turn.
So, Gina.
Yes.
I'm really curious. Why did you wear that color with your hair color? Why did you wear that color top?
Because it's my favorite color.
Right. So what I've just done there, I've asked Gina what I think is a perfectly logical question, had the best intention. I was really curious. But Gina went into justification mode. Gina felt that she had to defend herself a little bit. As to
100%. I'm like, I was trying to figure out what the right answer was.
Okay.
I was like, what's the right answer here? I mean, it is my favorite color, but the real answer is, I found it in my closet and I didn't realize I had it after my move, and I organized my clothes by color. I mean, all these things were going on in my head. I'm like, I was like, I don't remember having this one. I love that color. I think I'll wear it today. But I was like, I don't know how I should answer the question.
There you go. So imagine you're a sales leader and you say, hey, Gina, why haven't you made your numbers this week? So I want, your listeners, I want everybody to realize that the question why, and you hear in lean, go why 5 times deep.
Yeah, I love that.
Why that, why that, why that. Got to be really careful with the question why. Really careful with that question, because it is a question that makes somebody, the listener, immediately think, oh my God, what have I got to say here? The right answer. I'm justifying now. I feel like I'm defending what I've just done. And then from a sales leadership perspective, you want your people to be ultra 100% transparent with you. You got to give them the platform that makes them feel safe.
Exactly.
So a better question would be a question beginning with what? So, let's take that example again. Gina, what was it that made you wear that color today?
I just moved into a new house and I found this one in my closet and forgot that I had it.
Different. It's a different feel. So, with the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, Gina, what is it about reaching your numbers this month that's been difficult?
Because I'm moving into a new house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that is seriously, that is like my takeaway from this episode of the importance of the what versus why.
Yes. Yeah. And do you know what I have in coaching books read about avoiding the why, but I learned by doing, and just doing that there, it actually sunk in a lot more than the reflective reading. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think I got so much out of that. And there was something else, but this one just this being a story catcher. I know we talked about story last time, but maybe I'm seeing it a little bit differently this time.
Yeah, I've really gone down the story selling path. It's story selling is not just storytelling. And so I think when we talk about story, people think our minds immediately go to storytelling and telling stories. But story selling is so much more than that. It's the internal, the external, and the essential. And it's this whole story catching, storytelling, story seeking. And that's the model that I'm kind of really going to be bringing to the stage at Outbound.
I'm teaching Selling with Story this week at Sales Gravy University live at our 2-hour workshop. And I'm going to mention you and say that they have to come to Outbound so they can see another version of storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm going to use you to sell tickets.
Use me, but just don't abuse me.
No, not at all. Not at all. I know we're close to the end here, and I'm sure Susanna has. She's always got a great end of the show question.
I do. So, Bernadette, at the end, Truth or Dare that used to play? I don't know if you played it, but I used to play Truth or Dare in my teenage years.
Oh, geez, I've got to go, guys.
She's a good actress. She's used to doing the role play. But this one is going to be sales truth or sales quiz. Which one are you going to choose?
Oh, just toss a coin. I'm open for anything.
Oh, you have to choose. Gina, you've got to choose for her if she doesn't choose.
Okay, what's the choice?
It's you know this. Sales truth.
Sales truth. Sales truth.
Ooh.
Sales truth. Okay.
Yeah, well, we're going to dig deep. Okay, I'm going to ask you, who has been your biggest sales crush?
Biggest sales crush. Oh, can that be anybody?
That can be anybody. It can be anybody for any reason.
Who else would have been Bernadette? This biggest sales crush. Oh man, I don't know in what context here. I sales crush. Oh, I'm just trying to think of my clients. Pass.
Does that mean we have to give her the quiz question?
Yes, give her the quiz question. She's turning 12 shades of red.
I know, we got her back. So the quiz question is, I'm going to do this in an American accent, which gives you a clue. There is no easy button in sales. Prospecting is hard, emotionally draining work, and it's a price you have to pay to earn a high income. There is no easy button in sales. Prospecting is hard, emotionally draining work, and it's the price you have to pay for a high income.
Mark Hunter.
He might have copied, but it was Jeb. It was Jeb Lawrence.
Oh!
If you Google Jeb quotes, that's the one that comes up first. So there we are. But it's too late for him to take you away from Outbound. So we're all okay.
You won't get taken away from Outbound unless you don't turn in your presentation on time.
Oh,
that's all I could say.
Oh yeah, no, already been taken care of.
Make sure you get it in on time, or you will be eliminated.
Absolutely, unreal.
Okay,
Gonna be good.
It's going to be awesome. We can't wait to see you at Outbound. Susanna, do we have anything else? I don't have to answer any of these.
We haven't. I'm just very proud of you, Gina, that you didn't have any awkward moments not getting the Australian and English tones today. In the last episode, and I urge people to watch that last episode with Rachel, Gina, and Bernadette. It's awesome. And I just say, don't lose your sales clothes. Lose your sales clothes. Classic moments. And Gina,
you do got to go back and listen to that. Yeah. It was so funny. I'm like, oh, close the deal. I thought you meant your clothes. Hey, I get lost in translation a lot with Susanna, so she takes it out of me all the time. So I didn't have that for you today.
Oh no, that's great. It's been fun. It's been super fun.
Awesome. Well, if people want to get a hold of you, connect with you, work with you, what are the best ways to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Just go to LinkedIn, Bernadette McClelland, and my speaker website, BernadetteMcClelland.com. If anybody is interested in keynote speaking on story selling.
Fantastic. You can also find her contact information in our show notes for this episode. Once again, thank you, Bernadette, for being with us. We can't wait to do Battle of the Oprahs at Outbound with you.
Thanks, girls. Really appreciate it. Have an amazing day.
And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode brought to you by Sales Gravy. I'm Gina Trimarco. I'm out of here. Susanna, final words?
I'm out of here. Peace, y'all. Peace, y'all.